Hi, everyone. Today we are here for the Westchester Jewish Council Marketing Roundtable. I'm Michelle Gregson, and I'm on the board of Westchester Jewish Council. The council works closely with our 130 plus member organizations, which in turn serve the Jewish community of Westchester, the 8th largest Jewish community in the US, with nearly 150,000 Jews. Since its inception in 1975, the Westchester Jewish Council has become the central communication, coordinating, convening, advisory, and resource organization in Jewish Westchester. Through our work, we connect, convene, and safeguard Westchester Jewish communities and strengthen relationships among Jews and our member organizations, all of Westchester to Israel, Jews and our member organizations to our elected officials, and Jews and our member organizations to other ethnic and faith-based individuals and organizations, as well as to the community at large. That's a sentence. So now I want to introduce you to our speaker for today, Bruce Segall. Standing out in the crowded online world is the focus of Marketing Sense, Bruce Segall's company, of which he is president. He helps his clients communicate what is special and their brand and go on to execute pragmatic campaigns that deliver tangible results. Bruce has an emerging expertise in providing outsourced marketing director services for not-for-profits. He is also an active member of Greenberg Hebrew Center. Take it away, Bruce.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Let's see. Okay, I just want to make sure that you can hear me and see me okay. Morning, everyone. Feel free to change your name if you know how to do that in Zoom so that we can see your organization. So just by way of introduction, I'm here wearing two hats this morning. As a marketing consultant, I'm going to urge you to revisit your messaging periodically. My other hat, I'm a part-time marketing director for a Westchester, a small nonprofit here in Westchester, and I'm probably just as guilty as everyone else for not looking at my marketing messaging as frequently as we should. So my hope is that all of us, including me, will come out of this meeting with one resolution to revisit part of your marketing in the remainder of 2022. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and put it on screen share, slide share, rather. So the agenda, excuse me, I'm just going to move this. How do you know if it's time to revisit your messaging? So we're going to spend some time on that. We're going to do a breakout group. And how do you start the process? And then once you've decided it's time to come up with new messaging, how do you document that? How do you develop it? And then once you have your new messaging, how do you move forward with new marketing collateral, including potentially a website? So I'm happy to entertain questions, I guess just through the chat or through the chat feature. And if Lori or Pam can monitor that and then just raise your hand, that would be fine. So how do you know if it's time to refine? Well, hopefully, even if with a small organization, you're looking at the metrics. So are people opening your emails? How is attendance at services or at your functions doing? Are you raising money? Now, one concern, which didn't used to be a concern, but can also be recruiting employees. So that can be tricky for nonprofit organizations, whether they're very small or a little bit larger. And so your marketing, in addition to focusing on members, other partners, it also focuses on potential employees. And so those are the metrics. Hopefully, your open rates, how many people are attended. On the other side is qualitatively. Do you just feel like you look at it and you're just sick of copying and pasting the same copy, into your email messages every week? Other thing is that a lot of organizations and Jewish organizations It could be the copy was written, maybe for our parents' generation, or maybe it was written, it was developed when speak for myself, when I was younger, when I was a young parent, but now if we're attracting younger people, or that's a big focus, maybe it doesn't really speak to them. So, so how do you do this in a more structured way? I mean, I think a great litmus test is this little 3 phrases. Does it resonate, differentiate, and substantiate? Resonate speaks to, does it really speak to a need among your target audience? Are they going to really say, hey, that really makes sense, or is it another tired message? Does it differentiate? Does it make you look different and better than the alternatives? And then does it substantiate, not just to say, we're the best synagogue ever, but how are we the best synagogue? So just to illustrate that, I was looking for some examples of organizations that I thought had a good messaging. And I really thought that Romamu in the city, if you kind of look at that, they're not just using the same words. It's something that catches your attention. Jewish life elevated. I love this thing. It might be hard to read, but irreverently pious. So it's like, you look at that and it's almost surprising. And then it's very clear that it's, if you're new to Romamu, here's where you go. So what is called in marketing, the call to action is very clear. And I'm just going to click, this just isn't a blank screen, but I'm going to click on this and you can see how this is on the homepage of the website. You get the motion. You don't have to hear what they're saying, but it's just a nice little visual. So again, I think that this is an example of an organization that has strong messaging. I don't know if it makes it up. Oh, there we go. It stops. So as I said, to kind of recap and expand, does your copy speak to your current target market? And a lot of things right now, as I said, marketing is more complex. Nonprofit organizations are becoming more dependent on each other. So you may have multiple target markets. Your primary target market may be younger families, but you're also concerned about, as I said, the potential employee base or organizations that you might want to partner with. If you're a synagogue, what kind of other organizations might you be partnering with for educational programs? Hopefully, we all have a mission, vision, and values statement. So is your copy reflecting what is in that statement? I have to say, for my synagogue, for example, I couldn't recite the mission statement, offhand. I mean, I know we have one. Excuse me, I kind of have an idea of what it says, but maybe you don't have a mission, vision, and values, in which case it's going to be more difficult to write your copy. And and then just like you kind of know that you've gone on an autopilot, and I know that I'm guilty of that. And if you're still not sure, have you just been copying and pasting the same copy for the last 2 years? Then even if you're a very small not-for-profit organization, it may be time to refine. So those are my introductory remarks, and I thought we might explore that a little bit more in smaller groups. And these are the questions. Hopefully you received these in the pre-work and you're familiar with them, but hopefully if not, you can also answer. First I want you to go around and just quickly introduce yourself, name, organization, and then delve into the 2 questions. Is, does your copy messaging speak to your priority target audience? And then another way of kind of looking at that, is there a peer organization, a synagogue, or another Jewish organization or other organization whose copy you really admire? So hopefully between those questions, we can get some good discussion going. And I'll stop sharing for a moment and turn it over to Pam, who's going to set up the breakout rooms. And Pam, as I said, we can do 7-8 minutes is good. So I think, do people, okay, people have gotten their messages. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm invited to join one. I don't know if Lori or hello. Looks like everyone's back, I think. So does anyone want to share some insight or some question that came out of your group? And then,
I would just venture to say that we wanted more time.
right, it's always the way,
I
yeah.
mean, in these kinds of educational environment, I tend to get the most out of breakout sessions. Just hearing other people, their experience, their knowledge, their questions.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe if we have time at the end, or alternatively, if you noted the room, or if Pam wants to give you the name, we can give you the names of the people. So we have Rebecca, thank you. Rebecca from Beth Am Shalom.
Yeah, one thing that came up as we were talking is just, it's not just about the content of your messaging, but this style and tone, as well as the format, words versus pictures, and what, how that messaging is delivered. So that when we talk about messaging, it's not just about the content of the messaging, but the other components of it as well. Yeah,
absolutely. How it works together. A couple of really, I said it on a group, a couple of really interesting things came on. One is that one person depends on a parent organization, and she didn't really feel that the parent organization had particularly good marketing. So what do you do in that situation? And I've run into that before. And then the other thing, anyway, that was a really interesting point. Okay. Any other anyone else want to raise their hand or chime in before we move on? Okay. Okay. Hopefully everyone's seeing the slides. If not, let me know. Great. So the next important thing is, if you decided, well, my messaging really isn't, right where I want it to be, where do you get ideas for refined messaging? So obviously similar organizations, these are people near you or part of your movement, or people that are part of your affiliation. Now, if your parent organization doesn't have great messaging, you could also check the other people that are part of the movement. So you don't have to necessarily go through the parent, but you could also just go directly on their websites and reach out to them directly. And I think nonprofit organizations are increasingly realizing that they're dependent. There's an interdependency, and so people are willing to cooperate. In the science of marketing, you can borrow, a market research techniques, which is to have one-on-one interviews with your target market or markets. So this is where you would prepare a list of questions, and then you would walk through in a 20, you could meet for a cup of coffee. In the old days you would, but you could probably now via Zoom or phone, walk through those questions, pose some ideas, figure out what are their hot buttons, maybe run some ideas by messaging by them, and then collect all the data, make sure you're recording and reflecting on the data. So that I've just outlined a more formal process, but more informally, if you know that you have to redo your messaging, you can just, at synagogue or wherever, just informally say, hey, how do you capture the Greenberg Hebrew Center? What makes it special here? Another, kind of variant on this, which I've done quite a lot, is to actually, so sometimes what's written and what's spoken is more effective because the person, the rabbi or the president or the executive director has more captured the essence of what makes their organization special. And so a way to start and a really good input is to record those leaders. And that's really easy to do on Zoom or on your phone now. And so there's actually, and I do some marketing writing for clients as part of my practice, and actually recording and re-listening to the words can be very powerful. It's a little tedious and it's much easier to just kind of go from notes and memory, but there are situations where, kind of the essence. There is, I should have said, before that, needless to say, there's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of alternatives. There are a lot of people competing for messages. I know people were talking in the breakout room about spam messages and just a lot of noise out there. And so how do you break through? And so somehow when you listen really carefully, all of a sudden, like a light bulb will go off and say, that's it. That's really the key message, which is going to break through the clutter, which I believe that, Romamu had done. And it was very distinctive, the words that they chose. I should just say that, Rebecca, someone couldn't make the meeting today, and they put in their answer to the question, and they felt that Beth Am Shalom was an organization that they really, admired. And I just went on your website, and and indeed, there's a lot of good stuff. And then, just as you're going through the process, it's not a one and done. It's not in a half an hour. You have to have some way of recording the ideas. And then as you think about it in the shower, I spend a lot of time at my desk, but my best ideas are always when I, go for a jog or a bike ride, and I go back and have some place, to record. And then, of course, using Google Drives, then share it, with your team. So now I'm going to introduce something which is in a very small organization. You might feel like it's an extra step. It's very tempting not to just jump right to the copy, but I'm saying that if you're really committed to having an improved messaging, take this intermediary step, which is really more of an internal process of taking some of those ideas and documenting them in what is called a value proposition. And this is kind of like an oldie but a goodie. It's been around, for, since the flood or whatever, since I've been in business school. But very simply, for the target market, that and what do they need, then your organization is the kind of, what is that? It's a synagogue, it's a community. Some of you are with nonprofit organizations. What is that, frame of reference that people have in mind? And then most important, what's the point of difference? What makes you special? So just to illustrate that with Romamu and how it works for Jews on the Upper West Side and beyond that are looking for something experiential, spiritual, and welcoming, Romamu is a Jewish religious community. So community is important of that to get that idea. It's not just a synagogue, and then connects the heart, mind, and body to foster human flourishing. So then somehow, they have the words here connecting the heart, the mind, and the body. It's like that's really graphic, it's persuasive. It's not just more marketing copy, blah, blah, blah. That's sort of the other side. You really have something that, you really is memorable. And then I think it was Rebecca had said, and when we were talking before, to make sure that you have the visuals. You ultimately would need the visual images to support that, not just the words. So I'm kind of like a word guy, but absolutely, ultimately, this will have to, be supported equally, or maybe even more importantly, via visual image. I see I have a chat here, so let me just thank you. Great information. Okay, sorry, Josh, but thanks for joining us. Okay, so and then in, if you want to take it a little bit further, there are these things called reasons to believe. So that you could be sitting there, in your living room in your study with a few people and say, wow, we just have the best, value proposition for the Greenberg Hebrew Center. And, we're the best. And well, have you really defended that? What is the evidence that you're really the best or the place that's going to be irreverently pious? So, and here I just sort of shifting now to a non-synagogue organization, the American Jewish Committee, and I had gone on websites and tried to identify people that I thought had some compelling copy and messaging. So for them, it's Jews, Israelis, and all humanity that want a more secure future. They are the leading global advocacy organization, and they advocate for the Jewish people, for Israel, while defending democratic values for all. It's just, I love this anyway, but it has to be supported. And when you go and drill down, they specify the 6 issues that they are specifically working on. So it's not just they're advocates and they're defending, everybody, but there are 6 issues that they've selected and they've agreed, and that's very clear on their website. And then, they are international with 30 offices. That's very clear. And then again, the partnering. So there's different partner organizations that they work with. And then they had a quote for from the New York Times saying, hey, if you are looking for, a Jewish advocacy organization, this is the place to go. And so that lends, a third party credibility to them. So just, to sort of recap where we are, the most important piece of all of this is the point of difference. So I heard this recently in colloquial terms, it's a hook line. Like, how do you hook people in? At the end of the day, why it's like a, fish, they're on the street there in Westchester, and how do you pull them in? And then how do you support it? The reasons to believe. And then, as you're developing this messaging, here's a litmus test. Does it resonate? Does it differentiate? And does it substantiate? So, so I'm just going to pause right here and see if there are any questions, any comments. Okay. So, so you've done your new messaging, and now what? So then the next decision would be, are you going to do a full brand refresh, which involves generally updating your logo and your website, or can you use, sort of your current marketing, what I call, railroad tracks, your logo, your existing templates from MailChimp and whatever, Constant Contact. And, so that's a big decision. And how do you decide? Obviously budget is a huge consideration. Where you are in your leadership cycle. So is your rabbi's contract, is he planning or she planning to retire next year? In which case, maybe this isn't the best time, to invest in a complete rebrand, or maybe it is because you want to, prepare yourself for the future, but certainly keeping that in mind. What kind of resources, how much time is elapsed? It's highly unlikely if you just redid as a small organization, you just redid your website 2 years ago, it's unlikely that you're going to invest those kind of time and resources. So maybe you need to figure out how do we make the website, work for us. So one thing, also like maybe your messaging is just looks really different. And I just found an example of this morning. I'm just going to stop and share that. I think I had it up here. So, yeah. So let's just say this is a London synagogue, and let's just say they're hopefully people can see that their messaging is around being, a virtual community that's, in the synagogue, out in the community, and here's their logo. Well, you know what? That's not going to support it. So if they're really committed, to a new a new messaging, they may have to, get a new logo. Actually, that logo is pretty tired anyway, but, I came across that this morning and thought I'd share that, and, example of, well, how do you really know, how big a redo that you have to do. So. So now you have to say, okay, we have the new messaging. Well, where should the copy change? Well, there's, obviously your website, your email campaigns, your social media channels. They have all an about section and image. Usually, I'm guilty. I don't look at those things. I may have photographs, on the top of my Facebook, page that's, from 3 or 4 years ago isn't really relevant. LinkedIn is, I think, increasingly an area where not-for-profit organizations are realizing that it's important. Maybe not so much synagogues, but I know there's some, non-synagogues here. There's, we have the Human Rights Commission and the New Rochelle Public Library, and certainly they're realizing that to partner with others in the nonprofit, government, and business communities, LinkedIn is a really good place to be. So you have both your personal page, if you're the executive director of the library or whatever, as well as your company page. Grant proposals, introductory presentations, brochures, the list could just go on and on. I'll just stop and pause. Anything, that's really like, that I've glaringly missed here, or that it's a tough list, and it's really a challenge to keep everything kind of consistent, or at least somewhat consistent. So. And then there are other tools in a marketer's toolkit you can have before you write the copy. There's something called a creative strategy. There are things where it's a document like the messaging, where you're documenting, say you hire someone to do your website, this documents what they should be doing. Another thing that you can do that people are doing more and more of now is through personas. So these are looking at, say you want to attract young adults 35 to 40 who have just moved from New York City. So, it's a document in a way of thinking about their needs. What are they looking for in terms of the Jewish community to help you drill down? And then you can test your new messaging through email campaigns, social media. The other thing about testing is that I think that, we think about updating our website, and that's a big, sort of project, but you can actually, on a social media page, you can more easily, if you have some new messaging, you can more easily test that. And you could switch your Facebook page, for a month, switch it out with new messaging, new images, see how it feels, see what kind of reaction you get. And then you haven't changed your whole marketing, and it's not really that hard. It's not like a whole, website launch. Okay, here we go. Now, if you do decide, that you want to redo your website, this is an organization, since many of you are synagogues, many of this organization does specialize in synagogue websites and other nonprofits. There is also, if you're looking for recommendations, this organization's in North Carolina, you're looking for organizations that are local. One organization that I'm a member of can provide referrals, is the Business Council of Westchester. And so they have many different agencies, marketing services companies, like myself, that they can refer you to. So that's a good, resource to know about. So, and then, I also can do like a little mini audit, of your marketing and messaging. And then I also I've been in my own business for 11, 12 years now. I have 2,600 LinkedIn connections. So if you're looking for someone that specializes in, SEO and search, or in some little, corner of marketing, chances are among my 2,650 connections on LinkedIn, I might be able to help you with that. So, so I'm just going to pause. I do have, one other thing that we can cover, but I do want to just pause and see if there are any questions or comments. Okay, Brian.
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm just wondering if you just had off the top of your head some best practices that you've seen, like elements of subject lines that tend to get attention, or particular colors to use or not use, in other words, anything you
Yeah,
find.
no, that's a great question. What I do is I have 2 websites that I go to test subject lines.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have time, I'll email them to Lori. There's actually 3 sites. And so you kind of like doing a combination of the score that they give you. And then again, I'm a big also gut person. So it'll give you a quantitative score,
Mm-hmm.
certain criteria around the length, around using action words, using certain kind of word that I never really even understand. And then, it's kind of crazy stuff. But, I listen to it, but then I apply my gut and I say, does it really like grab you?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it, could be the greatest score, or something like, they'll tell you use famous people. So, what am I going to do? Do like, President Trump in my, my subject? I know, so you
Mm-hmm.
like apply common sense. So yeah, and then definitely colors. I think that it's moving towards more, kind of pastel, muted green, versus the bold in the primary.
Mm.
So definitely things are, are changing there. I tend to be a fan of shorter sentences
Mm-hmm.
and shorter paragraphs. And also, if any of you use MailChimp, but I'm sure it's in constant contact, they will critique your copy, like either before or after you send it out. And so like I was guilty of having a sentence with like more than 25 words, so. And then another thing you can do, Brian, is before I send something out, I'm a big like using a PC. I'm not a huge phone person, but I myself to look at the test on the phone and just say, being mindful that so many people are looking, at the phones. And so what are the images?
Right.
Is it here, or have I just, kind of like droned on and on, so, as is the tendency.
Thank you.
Anything else, or should I share one more tool? So this tool, I don't think it would apply to the synagogues, but it would apply to some of the larger organizations that are here. So it's a way, an extension of the positioning, where you kind of take that, and it's a way, if you have different audiences, particularly, it's a way to accommodate all those and come up with both a hook line and a support point for each of your main audiences. And then you sort of have like the tagline, the elevator speech at the top. You have a long version, a short version, then you go into messaging by audience. And then you can also kind of collect other parts of your marketing into this document. So your mission, vision, values, your purpose, what impact you have, there's something called brand attributes. Someone was talking about that earlier. So it's a way, it's kind of, I just developed one as part of this volunteer assignment. So it ended up being around 5 or 7 pages. So again, I'd recommend that for maybe larger organizations, not necessarily, definitely New Rochelle Library, government agencies, and so forth. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat. Oh, okay, so we have, okay. Oh, that's perfect. So we have in the chat someone who runs a company in White Plains that can help you with printed materials. I would say also don't ignore Brian, and everyone don't ignore the power of the printed word.
Mhm.
You know, there's still a place for that. And that, in fact, you know, is a way to break through with so much electronic information. So, you know, in fact, someone just came up with a clever name, like, I don't know, like at home something or other, but all it was really direct mail. And so direct mail is not dead, you know, and I've used that effectively in the last, you know, 3 or 4 years. Any other questions, Lori?
Nope, I don't see any other questions.
Actually, can I just make a comment? I
Yes.
know at Temple Israel, part of the copy that you were talking about before, which I wrote everything down, is also how we represent the different groups. So if a new member, prospective member comes in, we are careful how we represent Camp Pinebrook, you know, our camp, our nursery school with the appropriate elevator speech that you were mentioning. So
Right.
that's part of the copy that we've been working on.
Right, right. And Temple Israel is a large enough organization that you might be looking at that messaging map because you have different but I know you did have that daycare center and nursery school, you know, for a long time. You may still have it. So that's like a whole
Yes, we do.
have a whole campus there with, you know, camps and so forth. So yeah, so like the messaging map are appropriate for you, you know, versus, you know, a smaller synagogue. You know, that's really more of a Havurah type thing. You know, they probably don't need that.
But everyone that is representing the temple and bringing these prospective members around, whether they have children or they're older or whatever, needs to know what the speech is, so to say.
Right, that's right. So then you're right. Then you have your elevator. Didn't really focus on this quite enough, but have your positioning, you know, then you write your copy, but a big piece of it is the elevator speech. And so then having those elevator speeches for the different audiences. So this is what to say to someone who, for your nursery school, this is someone who comes for a tour or a meeting on the Hebrew school. This, you know, what to say to empty nesters. This is what to say, you know, to other organizations, you know, in your community, you know, the points to emphasize. That's an excellent point. What about sampling? Judith, could you jump on and elaborate that?
Well, in packaged goods marketing, a very common method is to allow people to sample the product before they make a commitment.
Right. Okay, yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I think that applies to nonprofit organizations too.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I mean, that's kind of getting a little bit away from the messaging and more to, you know, what is your offer specifically? But you're right, if there's a way that you could do like a little trial piece or, you know, free offer, you know, you're absolutely right. You know,
But
encourage you. Yes, Lisa?
But to Judy's point, I think also, the sampling can indicate whether the messaging is on target or not.
That's right.
I mean, if you have somebody walking into a store with a, you know, $100 coupon for chewing gum or whatever, that proves that whatever your messaging for that chewing gum was,
right,
and the incentive of the $100 coupon are working.
Right, right. So that would be another step after you completed the messaging. And then if you decided you needed to implement that messaging, so before maybe you would go into a complete, you know, redo of your website, you then would, you know, maybe test this messaging out, you know, maybe with a free offer on Facebook or something like that, and just
Mhm.
see how it goes. Or you could do, what I had mentioned was within an email marketing program, you can divide it into cells and test your new messaging with one, or your free offer, and then one cell, without it, and just see and compare the results. But that would be another step. Also, as you're developing your website, you could then have a private site where you look at it and then invite your target audience to come in and look at it. So before it's finalized, you're doing like user testing, essentially.
Right.
And all these things, it's all, a huge trade-off, because, many of you are volunteers, you don't have time, even if you're paid, you have very limited resources. So each one of these steps, really is going to add, a fair amount of time into it. Right. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah. I guess that's it.
All right. I know it was a lot of information to absorb, but feel free to reach out to me or Lori afterwards, and Lori, I'll send those those sites
Great.
with the links for Brian.
And let me ask you, on your packet that I'm going to share with everyone, correct? Is your information on there, like your web, all of your goodies?
Yeah,
Okay.
should be.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it's at the end. I put it
Great.
at the end. And then you can also, I'm a big LinkedIn person. You can always just find me on LinkedIn. I should be the only one with 2 L's in my name, or else you can't find me, there's a problem. So.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Bruce, for all this informative information. I was trying to take notes and take pictures as well. So thank you so much. And thank you, Michelle, for introducing the meeting. That was great. And just thank you for all of you for coming. I know we only do this once a year, so it's, unfortunately we decided to Zoom this year, which, it's nice to come together and have a meal and chit chat and share ideas, but maybe next year. But really, thank you all for coming. Just remember our ways of communicating over here at the council too. If you ever have any information to share from any of your organizations or synagogues, please send my way. We send a newsletter out every week that goes out to 8,000 people. We have the community calendar, which we love for everyone to share their events on, because we want it to be a community place where people can see if there's other things going on, not to have conflicts in scheduling. If you haven't already done so, please join our Facebook group and page. We have thousands of followers on that as well. So it's a great way to get your events out. And I've started to really try to utilize Instagram recently. So, that's another way that you can share your events with us. So just keep in touch. And, we really are so appreciative that you spent an hour with us today during your lunchtime. So take care, everyone.
All right.
Hey, I'd like to put
Yeah,
it in order to pick up.
Thank you.
All right. As they say, next year in Jerusalem, maybe next year in person.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
everyone.